Alright, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Engine Shed. Today's episode is going to be pretty brief. I just recently got something in the post that I feel is it's an essential part of my layout anyway. But something I've wanted to discuss with my YouTube audience for a while is auto reverses, because it's not something that's really covered very well on YouTube. And I feel that, you know, by adding my 2 cents anyway, I can sort of try and make that whole mystery of the auto reversing circuits a little bit more clear and a little bit easier for people new to the hobby and new to DCC to understand. So, but before I do that, I thought, well, I better offer some background as to why I'm doing this video in the first place. What you see in front of you, we've got two types of auto reversers. The auto reversers that I've had on the layout for like the last 2 years to 18 months are the Hornby DCC auto reversing modules. These things are pretty cheap. You can pick these up anywhere for next to nothing. So, you know, when I originally planned the layout, these things were just a nice addition. You know, budget's always one of the things you consider when you're first designing a layout. So these were just a cheap and cheerful option, and they've served me faithfully for like the last 2 years or thereabouts. But a couple of weeks ago, they started developing problems as the trains would enter the reverse loop or the isolated section of track. They weren't switching the polarity of the track properly, and this was causing massive short circuits across my layout, and it actually destroyed some of my DCC Concepts ADS-FX decoders. So it's lucky that I had a few of those spare, but it's very important to stress now that when you are designing a layout, definitely take into consideration using circuit breakers and auto reversers where and however possible, because it's going to save you a lot of problems in terms of things like short circuits or overloading, something to that effect. It's going to protect a lot of your decoders and your locomotors and all the other hardware that you have on the layout from just being utterly destroyed. The benefit now of me using an ECOS is the ECOS is quite well regulated, so any event of a short circuit, it pretty quickly shuts it down and moderates the power quite well. So previously when I was using the Hornby Elite, that wouldn't happen. It would just continually register as a short circuit, and the power wouldn't cut off all the time as effectively as it probably should have. But anyway, I digress. That's all in the ancient history books now. So just to briefly explain how these work, and I'll talk about the differences between this one and this one in just a second. But auto reversers are pretty simple. They're just really fast switches. So you can see here I've got this diagram I've just really drawn up, and I'm sorry if it's dodgy, but hopefully you can see that. I'll get my pen. When you wire up your layout, generally speaking, what I do with my layout is I use two types of wire. I use red and black. That's pretty common for positive and negative. It's called polar wiring. So red is usually positive, black is usually negative. So when you're reversing a reverse loop, or wiring a reverse loop I should say, you end up with this sort of situation where your outside track will loop back in on itself, and as everyone knows in DCC, red must go to red. Red cannot go to black, black cannot go to red. So you can see here when you do a reverse loop, there's this problem where the positive meets the negative. Now if those two touch, you get a short circuit. The whole system shuts down. Catastrophe. You're never going to be able to run a train. So this is where an auto reverser is useful, because the electronics in an auto reverser are designed to not only detect a short circuit, but within a fraction of a second, I think it's 1/100th or 1/10 of a second or something minute like that, it will switch the polarity of the track, the isolated track. So for example, when you isolate a reverse loop, you'd have your main feed, which would be your entry here. You'd isolate the track here and here. When your train enters this end or this part of the reverse loop, the polarity is the same. But when your train exits this part of the loop, the polarity will be different because it's going back in on itself. So the auto reverser will then very quickly switch it to this polarity. So then the train can continue running and there's no short circuit. So that's generally the premise of how an auto reverser works. It basically flips the wires really quickly and trains can continue running without problem. Now, this is where the debate of what type of auto reverser you should use comes into play. If you've got one of these like me, or like one of these I used to have, these little Hornby auto reversers and many others by many other manufacturers are mechanical. And why are they mechanical? Well, let's have a look inside of one. If I take the lid off this, okay, what we can see here is the PCB or the internals of the Hornby auto reverser, and this is pretty standard across most manufacturers. So you have your input, you have your output, and in between there you've got various resistors and capacitors, but the most important part of this is the actual switch. So these are mechanical switches. So when the short circuit occurs, it goes through all this circuitry, and one of these switches, or both of these switches, depending on which feed needs to be changed, will fire across, basically like a toggle switch, and change and flip the polarity around so it's correct and the train can continue operating on. So, sounds good, right? Everything works normally, everything's perfect when it comes out of the box. That's not the problem. With a mechanical switch, however, what ends up happening is, because a DCC short circuit is very, very short, as the name implies, but the other problem with a DCC short circuit is that it's a very high current. So every time the switch changes, you actually get arcing inside the switch. And the contacts within the switch suffer from that, because every time you get an arc on a contact within a switch, it pits the switch, it corrodes the switch, it damages the switch. So if that goes on too long, basically the switch becomes ineffective and the contacts are rendered useless. So even though this might detect a short circuit, it will change the switch, but the switch isn't going to do anything because the contact has just been destroyed from excessive use. Now, in my case, my main line is actually in a giant reverse loop. So I had these wired up to the main line and they worked well. They worked perfectly fine for like the last 2 years, as I said. But it was only in the last couple of weeks and months that this started happening. And you can tell when one of these is going to fail because it will try and correct a short circuit an infinite number of times until the polarity is correct. And with a mechanical switch, it'll just keep switching back and forth, and it sounds like a... And that's the easiest way to tell this is failing, but because I had these mounted underneath the baseboard, I couldn't actually hear the switch doing that. So just keep a very close eye on any of your reverse loops, particularly if you are using a mechanical one, because there is a high chance that they could fail at some point. So just making sure that you're keeping tabs on that, you should be okay. But anyway, that's the general architecture of a auto reverser. You do get more complex ones and more capable ones, but generally speaking, they're relatively the same. Now, when it came to selecting a new auto reversing module, I was sort of in a rock and a hard place because, as everyone, most people, or most of my subscribers would know by now, this lathe is based in Australia. I am Australian, and the Australian market is not known for having a great deal of variety in terms of very specific DCC hardware. So like most of the stuff that I get on this channel, this was an eBay buy, and for anyone interested, you can always check out this cracking little eBay shop called Kais Kemper, and I'll put a link on the YouTube video there if there's any interest for it. This guy was fantastic. They ship all of their stuff from Germany. I got it within a week. I bought the ESU ECOS from this guy, really reasonable prices. But these particular units are the Lenz LK200 auto reversers. Now, what is different between this and that Hornby one I just showed you before is that this is a solid state auto reverser. So there's no moving parts, there's no mechanical switches, which means there's no chance or very little chance of there being a mechanical fault or an electrical fault due to moving parts. So it's all solid state, nothing moves. It basically is, well, I won't use the word guaranteed not to fail, but the chances of it failing are far, far, far less than they were before. So anyway, I picked up 2 of these, so 1 for each main line, and my reverse loop is actually on the Helix, and I'll show you a video of that shortly. And these particular units working and how I wired them up. But the useful part about this is, as I said, because it is solid state, it's silent, there's no switching noise, it's pretty much guaranteed to work. again, I use that word very, very loosely. Guaranteed is not the best way to describe this, but there's a high chance of it working almost flawlessly every time. And these don't require calibration. Some of them you need to program on your CV list beforehand. One of the options I was looking at before I bought this one was a product called the DCC Specialties PSX-AR. And my only issue with that one was that this one comes with a shroud, much like this plastic casing. So the internals are all nicely protected in that. Being in Australia, it's a very humid environment. So if there's any exposed electronics, the chances of it getting damaged by corrosion and elemental damage is actually quite high. So for me, that was a bit of a turn off, the fact that that particular brand didn't have a shroud or a cover over its componentry. So this one does. It's also got mounting positions, so it's a lot easier to handle, and it's a lot easier to mount to a baseboard than the alternative. But so far as I know, you can pick these ones up. You can pick up the DCC Specialties one. If you are going to use an auto reverser, I would at all costs recommend getting a solid state one. So I can confirm that the LK200 is a solid state. There's no switches, nothing mechanical in it. One of the other problems with a lot of these products is there's not really a lot of information about them available, because it's either in German or it's not generally discussed. There's not too many videos on these particular products. So, which is again one of the aims I had of this channel, was just alleviating and detailing about some of the awesome products that are available. And this is one of those instances where fantastic product that just hasn't had the coverage it really needs. So if you are looking at getting an auto reverser, I recommend the Lenz stuff. It's really good. I've had it on the layout for a couple of hours now. Trains have been running for the first time in weeks, and I've had no issues thus far. Of course, I'll do a follow-up video of this in the months to come, just reassuring anybody who wants to buy that this is a really good piece of kit and worth it. But you know, for me, it was $100, 100 Australian dollars, so that's cheaper pretty much everywhere else. If you're an international viewer of mine, you can pick that up cheaper. I'm almost certain of that. But yeah, like always, do your homework. eBay, just a general thorough search online could save you a couple of $100 in some cases. In this case, I bought two and saved some money on postage and whatnot. But anyway, so that basically concludes my discussion on auto reversers in general. As always, if you do have any questions, please be sure to leave me a comment in the comment section. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share this to your friends if you really want. I always appreciate feedback. So until the next one, and in terms of the next video, I'll be continuing on with the DCC series for the ESU. I promised I'd be doing a video on how to program routes. That has already been filmed. I'm editing that right now. Well, not right as we speak, but it's in the process of being edited, and I'll put that up on YouTube in the coming days after this video. The channel's doing really well. I'm really pleased to see we've hit over 500 views, which is awesome, and 16 subscribers, which is just ridiculous. I didn't expect there to be that many subscribers in such a short amount of time. So to those people, I thank you for your support. There'll be more coming from the channel for sure in the coming weeks. I always keep saying that, but you know, now that I've got one of the major problems solved, I can now do some running videos of the layout and finish off what I should have finished off months ago, which is the yard you can see in the background. So I've already installed some point motors and whatnot. I've just got to finish it off now. So once that's done, the layout's pretty much done in terms of hardware, and then we can start doing the fun stuff, the scenery. So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, that concludes what I have for you today. So until the next time, I'll catch you in the next one, and I'll leave you some video footage of the unit in operation. So catch you in the next one, guys. Okay, so back again. We're just going to do a quick video. You can see the two units down in the bottom of the screen here, just down there. Now what's really cool about these units is they do have little LEDs inbuilt, so you can tell when this polarity is being switched. So I'm just going to call up a class 350 out of the station, and hopefully we'll get to see them change polarity. The other advantage is if you're using a double or a crossover, it'll change the polarity of it for you without causing short circuits. Alright, I'm just going to stop it here, switch the point. go, you can see that bottom one's just changed polarity. Easy as that. So my entire helix is actually wide to be the reverse loop, that way I can fit my full length trains in there without an issue. And the nice thing about these new Lenz modules is that they do support full 5 amp current through there, so the track is getting the full power, as opposed to before with the Hornby units, because the contacts were corroded and damaged, the track wasn't getting the full power, so it was actually compromising the performance of the locomotives, especially when they were going uphill. So keep that in mind if you are using one of these and you are using sound locomotives. It's a perfect solution because it will regulate the current that's going in to the current that's going out without there being any loss of power due to mechanical switches. So that's the other advantage of a solid state switch. So very happy. If you're ever in the market for a auto reverser, the Lenz LK200 is a very good option. Hope you enjoyed the videos, and we'll see you in the next one. Catch you later.